Hello everybody, hope you're having a great day. So today's painting is going to be a Chinese watercolor. I'm using Rebelle 3. I have the pressed paper tinted blue. So what I'm doing here is I've taken the ink tool and put in some lines, and then I'm taking the water tool and putting water over it and adding some more ink. The reason I'm doing this is about to become apparent. I'm turning on the tilt and then turning on the blow tool to blow out some organic stalks for kind of an underwater reef kind of look. This is a great way to get just some nice organic branches, so it works great for trees and coral and stuff like that. And so then I'm just kind of repeating the process a little bit here because I wanted to add some more to it and bring it out. By the way, this is sped up, obviously. It's sped up about 4 times for what I did for painting it, because I figured probably nobody wants to sit around for a whole hour and watch me do this. So then I fade in the bottoms to kind of let it blend in for where eventually I will put the ground. And then I start a new layer to start the fish. Now when you start a new layer in Rebelle, that means that layer that was just there now becomes mostly dry. And then this layer that I'm painting on is dry. And just trying to freehand and shape in a fish here. And get the look and feel of it. So, you know, trying to, not any kind of real, I mean, I did look at some, a photo I'd taken at an aquarium forever ago with some fish, but I wasn't trying to really replicate an exact fish, just kind of the look of it, you know, but not trying to be photorealistic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just trying to get the idea of this certain fish. So one of the nice things about Rebelle is that because it has that watercolor engine, you can lay in these other tones and colors and values, and it'll really kind of, I guess technically hues, it'll fade it out for you. And then if you play around with the amount of water that is in your tool, you can really control that quite a bit once you start getting used to it, which I'm getting more and more used to it now. Still not 100% there, but you know, getting used to it. So what I'm using here is the ink tool. The ink tool puts down much more vibrant, saturated color, and then it will blend in a little bit softer as it's going there. But then I take the blending tool itself and kind of encourage it. I'm finding I kind of like doing it this way because it lets me really control the saturation and fade out of the colors. So. But, and then the pencil tool here, because the pencil tool doesn't bleed at all. It has no water in it. It's not one of the water-based tools. It lets you really kind of draw out what you're wanting. And then I eventually go back and do fade it in because it's a little too rough. I don't like the look of it. And then just pushing and pulling the shapes and trying to get the form that I want and figure it out as far as like the highlights and the shadows and all that. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. It's just working on that. So now I decided I wanted to put in some scales, but not at this point, not like a whole bunch of detail scales, but just really kind of the lines for the way they would flow. I wasn't too sure if I was going to do the traditional, what people think of for Chinese watercolor scales, like for koi and stuff like that. I do kind of go back and do a little hint of that, but I wanted to just have some suggestion at this point. So, and then going in, again, pulling localized colors. So when you're painting with this or any medium really that's digital, I find it's best to, once you get a blend, use your blend to start getting your other colors, and it keeps the colors harmonious for getting the different shades and values and stuff. So and then just again trying to put in more color and more darks and lines and details. Try not to overly detail it, because again, I'm not trying to go, one of my problems that I have, I don't know if you have this or not, one of the problems I have is that I try to go photorealistic or get to the details a little too fast, and that I had to keep reminding myself that's not what I was going for here. What I was going for was something kind of in Chinese watercolor you have detailed style, which is what you see where it's all very drawn out and all the line drawing there. Then you have spontaneous style, which is kind of where you'll see pores of color and splashes of where the water's been faded out, and then from there they kind of scratch in or hint at whatever it is, and so there's just the bare minimum detail to give you the form. And then you have a halfway style between the two. That's kind of what I was going for with this, is that halfway style between them, where it's got some of the lines, some of the fade. It almost gives it a cartoon kind of feel, like a halfway between a cartoon and a painting, I guess is the only way I can think to put it. But that's eventually that's kind of what I'm going for, and that's kind of what I was thinking from the beginning. So playing around with it. It's always funny too when you speed up Rebelle how much you can see the watercolor engine really kick in, because sometimes when you're painting this it's so subtle that you don't see it. Now as I was looking at this, oh, and here I'm about to put in the red coral reef that I wanted around it that's going to kind of frame the fish. So what I did here was just lasso tool, rough shape, found the red that I wanted, and then using the spatter 2 brush just started throwing in color. I have paused the bleed, and so that's the water engine's not kicking in at the moment, and so I have that paused so that way I can really get in the colors that I want. Then I turn it off and you can see it starts to immediately blend in and fade in. Then I am adding in more water in areas that I want it to blend even more, and kind of playing around with that and trying to use the blow tool. For whatever reason it wasn't really working there too much, but then I started here and playing around with again getting those generic shapes, knowing that this part, some of this I'm going to erase back because I don't want it to be as chaotic as it is right now. Although that was kind of fun, and I'm thinking, okay, I can really go with that spontaneous style by doing this next time. So here I'm just kind of looking at it where it's at to see what I can blow around and move around with the water and the blow tool, and then add it in. That's always kind of a neat thing where you throw in some water and then you use it to push the paint out into the water, and it gives that really random kind of feel. So that's what I'm doing here, is just again pushing the colors, pulling them. And then I'm going to do something that I've done in traditional watercolor. In traditional watercolor, I would throw salt on this and let the salt pull the pigment back. Well, you can do a similar thing with the eraser by going with the splatter tool, the splatter brush, I guess, and then erase out random spots. And it really, to me, it gives a really cool effect on this coral here in just a second. Here it goes right here. But see how it kind of really plays up that transparent and lets you see through it and gives it that lacy coral kind of feel. I really dug how it looked, and so it lets me kind of play around with it and see. So then I wanted to throw some whites in the background, break up all that blue, even though I know I'm going to put grass over it. I wanted to, and then the other thing I realized, that fish is way too small. So I needed to blow it up and change it around a little bit because it just looked dwarfed by everything else. So so I needed to do that. But then by putting that white in there, it really gives that look of almost like salt or something like that has been laid across it. This purple right here, I was originally thinking it was going to do another piece of coral. There was a piece of coral in a picture I had that almost looked like a leaf. But then I thought, I don't like that because it almost looks like a leaf. So then I just thought, well, I'll just go with the stalk of the coral, which to me looks kind of cool. And then I wanted to seat the coral in the background by giving it just a little hint of sand beneath it. And then taking the pen tool and using the wood brush and then switching back to the fountain pen. I really like the fountain pen more than the other ones. But switching back to that, I started laying in the grasses and playing around with it. And then as I was doing this, as I got close to finishing up the grasses here, I realized that by resizing that fish, he really had a, oh, and I wanted to put some speckles in. So I have a Starfield stencil that I made that I use for like space paintings and stuff. But it also works for just the stuff in the water that you see. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Took a toothbrush and splattered white on it. Just throwing a little extra water on there, kind of playing around with some of the colors in the background a little bit more, laying a little bit more of the white on top. But anyway, so I realized that the fish was still a little blurry from resizing it, so I wanted to adjust it and then go back in and ink it to get that, again, that half detail look where it gives it a little bit of almost like cartoony kind of stuff. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm going back and inking it to get that crisp up some of the edges and stuff. So I realized as I went back and looked at this, I should have taken a lighter color for doing so. I was trying to get almost the India ink kind of feel, but it's a little too stark. So I did go back later and soften it, but could have saved myself some trouble if I just chosen a lighter ink. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on this. What do you like about it? What do you think I could have improved? Did you learn anything from it? So to me, it's always a learning thing for these practice pieces. And I did like it enough that I went ahead and turned it into a postcard on Redbubble. So that's the size of this. It's a postcard size from their dimensions they have on Redbubble. So here I wanted to go back in and clean up and really hint at some of the scales and give it a little bit more detail. And so that's what I'm doing right here, is just adding in some. I don't want to sit here and do every scale, not from laziness or anything, but also just because, to me, unless it's done really, really well, it never looks right. You know, I've seen some guys like tattoo artists and stuff that have just practiced and practiced and practiced, and it looks phenomenal. And I've seen other people, including myself, that do it and haven't put in that time to practice it enough that it just looks eh. So that's what I didn't want to do. And I think just the hint of the scales is a lot as well. So, and here I'm just going and throwing in some more highlights to give that look. But as you can see, it's you know, a little too cartoony. It's kind of that weird spot, especially with the background. So the background, I knew I needed to go in and not only soften some of the fish's lines and vary the lines, but then I needed to add lines to the coral and other stuff to get that halfway point between spontaneous and detailed style. So that's what I'm doing here, is just kind of detailing out some of it and trying to pull everything together by the line work and colors. So that's what I'm doing right here. And you'll notice it's not really, even though it looks black, it's not really black that I'm using here. It's just a dark tone, a dark value of the of that hue. So I just went in and grabbed, you know, like the red and made one with a super dark maroon, grabbed the green with a super dark green. And then going back over it to do it. And again, I'm not trying to outline it completely on it, because I want it to have that loose look. And that's what I saw here. So then I realized, okay, I just want to soften some of the edges on the fish too, because they're a little too stark. And that's what I'm doing here, to try and go back and fill it in. So about to reach the end of it, about to sign it. So again, I hope that you learned something from this. I hope some of the stuff I've said here has helped you get something out of it. Leave a comment below with any questions, any thoughts, suggestions. I'm always open to feedback. And again, I've really enjoy putting these up here, and I hope you get something out of them. So make sure to like and subscribe and share with everybody else, and come on over to our Facebook group. You know, it's a small little growing group, but it's nice because everybody in there is pretty much trying to help each other learn more, and that's what it's about. So I appreciate it. And here I'm gonna just flatten everything out and give it a signature and call it done. So have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.